Hey guys, in this video I'll be showing you my mix for Waymaker. The audio will sound like this. And end up like this. Let's get into it. Before we get too far in the video, could you guys please hit the like button? It actually would help me out for getting this video to rank up in YouTube's algorithm. This is not content I usually produce, so doing this would actually help me out a ton. Thank you very much. Okay, to begin with, I'll show you that I've used 12 microphones for this particular recording. Now on Tom 4, I actually did not use the audio for this recording because I never actually hit the tom. So technically this whole recording could have been done with 11 microphones. So in my setup, I have my two snare drum microphones sitting here. I have kick drum in and out. I have my tom microphones and overheads. Then I have a hi-hat, room, and ride mic. I'll get into my bus settings later in this video. Okay, to begin with, let's go over the snare drum microphone. So in this particular instance, I actually copied the top snare drum microphone so I can use it as a sidechain to trigger my gates. So the way this works is I take the audio from this channel. Sorry, let me turn off my groups. Okay, the way this works is I use the audio from this channel and I copy it into this aux mix right here. So what I do is move the actual audio slightly behind the original audio track. So the reason I do this is I need the gate to actually trigger before the audio is actually played. Otherwise, I would have the first part of the snare drum hit basically cut off. And the way I also do this is that channel needs to be EQ'd to emphasize the snare drum hit and de-emphasize everything else in the track. So this basically allows me to basically trigger only on the snare drum as much as possible. There is still some bleed from other drums in my setup, but this is from what I found to be the best way to do this. So I want to go quickly through all of the plugins that I use for my setup. Okay, essentially on my snare drum, I'm starting off with a gate that's being triggered from this channel. The next thing I'm doing is put an EQ to notch some of the frequencies that I'm not liking on the snare drum. The next thing I do is put an NLS channel to basically drive the channel a little bit more. It basically adds a little bit of color to the snare drum. And basically I do this on every channel, so I won't be fully explaining how this works. Just know that it actually makes the snare drum sound a little bit better as far as my taste. Next thing I'm doing is putting a compressor, specifically the Ssl A6400 from Waves. And I'm aiming for about 3 dB of compression, maybe a little bit more. And I got a 4:1 compression. And here's my attack and release settings. This is a EQ to basically notch out some of the frequencies that were from the cymbals that didn't sound good to me. So this is the SSLE channel that I used on the snare drum microphone. This is my EQ. This is my compression settings. And again, I'm not aiming for a ton of compression on here. Okay, the next thing I'm going to go through is the bottom snare drum microphone. Same thing on this channel. I basically use the same technique all the way through. I use the gate, then I use another notch EQ settings. I use the NLS channel. Then I use the LA76 and the Ssl E channel. Next thing we're going to go to is the kick drum microphones. This is the kick drum microphone inside the bass drum. Once again, same setup that I used before, except I took out the gate to begin with. Notch frequencies up top, LS channel, LA76, another notch EQ that basically takes out some of the boxiness. Same thing here with the Ssl E channel. More frequencies than I'm emphasizing, up and down, and then cutting a few frequencies here, and then boosting a few at the low end. Compression settings. And then I'm using the gate on the Ssl E channel to actually do my gating. Before I move on, I actually need to explain something on the snare drum that I did. So on the bottom snare drum mic, I also have the initial EQ phased reversed to make sure that the phase of the snare drum microphone isn't basically canceling some of the frequencies that are needed. Also, the snare drum microphone, the bottom snare drum microphone is slightly behind in audio timing than the top snare drum microphone because of distance. So I actually go at the end of my editing stage and just manually move that backwards to just align up basically at the same timing of the top snare drum microphone, and that basically allows me to dial in the bottom, basically the phase cancellation. I can see the waveform. I know exactly what's being canceled, which usually is the low frequency. Continuing on, I will go through the rest of my kick drum, specifically the sub kick. Same settings as before. Here's the kick drums together. The next thing we'll go to is the overhead microphones. I'll go back to the tom microphones in a second here. Okay, on this channel, I basically have a trim plug-in to even out the microphones slightly. So sometimes I don't have the perfect audio level on both microphones, so if I want to adjust that, I use the trim level plug-in to begin with. The next thing I do is have a Ssl T3i compressor. So this compressor has been on my channel forever, and it doesn't look like it's actually doing much here. It's just basically hitting the hits of the snare drum slightly. And this is my settings for the Ssl A76. I have an 8-to-1 compression because I basically want to compress these pretty heavily. Next thing is the E channel. There's no compression going on in this channel. I basically left that up to the other compressors. And this is the EQ settings. And note that I actually have the phase reverse. I actually don't know if it's actually making much of a difference, but it's something that I ended up clicking, at least on this channel. This EQ actually is notching out the fundamental of the snare drum slightly. I guess it was cutting through a little bit too much for me. Okay, I'm going to move on to the hi-hat microphone. There's not a lot of places for the hi-hat microphone on this song, but I'll go ahead and show you my settings. This is the EQ settings. To begin with, I'm basically cutting out a lot of the low frequencies. So this is the gate for the microphone. I wanted to gate the snare drum slightly. This is an NLS channel. And this is the Ssl channel. This is the room microphone settings I used. Okay, this is a channel rundown. I actually used this room microphone pretty good in this mix. This EQ probably didn't need to happen, but that's fine. I basically cut a little bit of the high frequencies on this. This EQ may have actually not have been engaged at all, but it is what it is. The next thing is the NLS channel, CLA, then the EQ, SSLE channel. Next thing I'm going to take a look at is the ride microphone. I didn't do a ton to this channel, but I'll go ahead and show you the settings. So like I said, there's not a lot going on here other than NLS channel, and then I have a 76 compressor, basically compressing it pretty heavily. And then I also have the SSLE channel EQing it to get a little bit more of the high frequencies, and also there is some compression going on. No gating on the right microphone. The next thing I'll look at is the tom microphones. Okay, here's the tom microphone settings for tom 1. here's the tom microphone settings for my 4-tom. So same general thing as I've done before. I basically have a notch EQ on the 4-tom a little bit to get rid of some of the frequencies here that I wasn't liking to begin with. The rest of it is pretty much the same. NLS channels, CLA compressors, SSL channels. You may have noticed that I did not gate the rack tom and the 4-tom on this particular recording up until the chorus. The reason is there's so much going on with the toms, you really just don't want to mess with that. Afterwards, I actually did go in there and manually gate these 4-toms. Also, one last thing to note is that the SSL channel, the threshold for the expander is basically set constant throughout the whole song. It's set for the beginning of this tom fill. So basically what was going on is the 4-tom wasn't coming through the expander or the gate very well. So basically what I did is actually set that as a manual change here on the timeline so that the threshold would be less in this particular spot so I can get that 4-tom to come through. Otherwise it was just cutting off and sounding kind of nasty. So that's something you need to learn how to do every so often, is actually set your controls using the timeline at some point. But it's really a good idea to go ahead and figure out your general setting and then go back and fix that later. Like I said, I didn't do anything with this 4-tom, so all these channels are basically not usable anyway. Okay, the next thing I have set up is my snare drum actually has a reverb channel of its own, and basically the way this works is you see the bus channels 7 and 8 both go to this channel right here. So this is the level I'm setting of my main snare drum, and this is the level I'm setting of the bottom snare drum microphone. And this is basically what it sounds like with this engaged. As you can tell, that makes a huge difference in snare drum sound. So this plugin is basically Verbiage by Ssl Audio. So check it out. The next thing I have going on here is basically the rest of the drum kit. And as you can see, those are being routed from bus 3 and 4. And to give you an idea of what I'm sending, here's the kick drum, not a ton. I'm not sending the sub kick. Here's the rack tom and 4-tom, basically the same amount of level. Here's the overheads, not as much. Same thing with the hi-hat. Room microphone's actually not going to a reverb. And here's the ride microphone. Not much more either. So mainly I'm emphasizing the 4-tom and the rack tom. So here's what this sounds like. It just basically makes it come into the room a little bit. Okay, the next critical thing I have going on is I have basically parallel compression. So basically my channels are being routed from bus 1 and 2 to two different channels. One sent to here, and actually the other channel is bus 11 and 12. So I actually did change the levels. So I guess I was considering that I wanted to not send the same level to the compression channel on some of these audio tracks, and I actually didn't do too much difference. So I possibly could have got away with the same level of all the tracks. So looking back at it, I could have just used bus 1 and 2 for both of these, but it is what it is. So without doing anything, the clean channel is basically a clean channel as I've already mixed. So on the compression channel, I'm using two different compressors, the V-Comp and the 76 compressor. And I'm going to engage these, and that way you get a good idea of what the audio sounds like. And that's what the two channels sound like together. And the next thing I got going on is these two channels are being sent to bus 5 and 6, which is my bus channel. And on this channel I'm doing a couple of things. I'm basically sending it through what I call a tape emulator, which is Kramer master tape. These are settings I'm using. So the master tape basically makes it sound a little bit more warm, I guess you could say. It basically emulates the tape. To me, it makes the recording just sound a little bit better. This VEQ basically is turning up the volume slightly, but also adding slight EQ to the whole mix. It's basically emphasizing the low end, the mids, and the highs a little bit. And you can see the frequencies that I'm emphasizing here. The next thing we're going to turn to is my master bus. And I'll just let you hear it as it comes through. Note that once I hit this L2 that the level actually goes up quite significantly, because it's basically the master bus compressor for me. So the way this master channel is working is I have another EQ from Waves, the VEQ. You can see the settings I'm using here. There's slight adjustments, not very much. Running it through this channel actually just makes it sound better to me. I have this red EQ. I don't really know what this one was doing. I haven't actually checked my settings. I might not even be doing anything to it, to be honest. The next thing I have going on is the Ssl Buss Compressor. And you can see I'm running a little bit over 4 dB of compression here. The next thing I have here is the L2 compressor. So basically what this does is when I have the original audio track, I mix it together where the drums are emphasized a little bit more, and then I use this compressor to basically cut some of the kick drum and snare drum hits a little bit off. And also it brings up the level of the track within the drum mix as well. So basically it allows the two to mix a lot better. Without this, it's not going to come through very well as far as a level of audio for me. So this is something I always have to do to each of my tracks. Honestly, it'd be great if I didn't have to use a bus compressor like this, but it is what it is. You have to do it. And the last thing I do is the De-Esser. And that's basically my mix for this song. If you want to listen to the original track, please go back to my YouTube channel and you can see the drum cover for this video and you can see how it mixes with the actual song. If this is content you guys would like to see in the future, please hit the like button and maybe consider leaving a comment with any questions or what kind of content you would like to see. And that's basically my entire mix for this song. Hopefully this will help you out as far as mixing your own drums. I'm not an expert by no means in this field, so basically everything I've shown you is something I've learned from YouTube or asking around or reading on the internet. So take this advice as much as you can, and hopefully you guys can make some awesome video content with it. Thank you.